I want to, just as a reminder or overview, the April 10th officer-involved shooting was on Bellworth Drive in unincorporated Winnebago County. That involved a Winnebago County Sheriff's deputy, and the shooting resulted in the death of Faustin Quatigo. The second occurred near the 400 block of Illinois Avenue on April 11th. That involved a Rockford Police Department officer, and in that matter, Jose Gonzalez Jr. was injured. It's imperative that the community understand that this is a preliminary and ongoing investigation. Our understanding of the facts may change as the investigation continues. Further, I, as state's attorney, will reserve judgment until the end of the investigation. As I've mentioned before, our office and the task force's goal is to be as transparent as possible. However, there are limitations to that. On Thursday, April 15th, I issued a press release which provided factual details from the incidents. Much of that, particularly as to the sheriff's deputy, was as a result of review of the video evidence. In addition, both the sheriff and our police chief have released video evidence of these incidents. You are very unlikely to receive any more factual updates as to these incidents. What these updates will do is really provide the status of the investigation thus far. So I want to clarify a couple points that I've received kind of since this happened. The Police and Community Relations Improvement Act is something that I talked about in the previous press conference. And I want to clarify, that requires an independent review when there's a death. What the Winnebago and Boone County Task Force, we're outside of the statute in the sense that there doesn't have to be a death for the task force to be activated. And Gonzalez Jr. is a great example of that. It's not statutorily mandated that there be independent review. However, our integrity task force was activated. And we've created in Boone and Winnebago County a structure since 2010 to do that. And so I think that might have been a little bit lost in translation, so I want to clarify that. Secondly, I've been asked numerous times what my role is, or what my role was in the release of the video evidence. So I was consulted about the release of the videos. However, ultimately the decision was up to the law enforcement agencies, in this case the Rockford Police Department and the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office. I'm now going to call ISP Master Sergeant Charles Davidson up to the podium for an update on the investigation.
Good afternoon. My name is Chuck Davidson. I work for the Illinois State Police as a Master Sergeant, also commander of the Winnebago Boone County Integrity Task Force. The investigation into both officer-involved shootings are proceeding as expected. The task force has received all evidence from our crime scene investigators. We are in the process of reviewing, examining all the evidence, statements, video, and reports collected by both officer-involved shootings. Investigating officers include detectives from the Illinois State Police, the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office, Rockford Police Department, Loves Park Police Department, Boone County Sheriff's Department, and the Rockton Police Department. Here's a short list of tasks accomplished by the task force investigators thus far. In regards to the shooting on Bellworth Drive involving Winnebago County Sheriff's deputies, we've been in the process and have collected approximately 50 squad car videos, body cams, and independent videos. We're in the process of reviewing those. Obviously, that's a time-consuming task. Collection of all evidence taken from the CSI investigators. Our CSI investigators have collected approximately 60 exhibits, and that doesn't include their photographing of the scene, as well as their reports that we have to collect as well. We've also sent detectives out to collect the 911 calls, radio traffic, officer reports, CAD, which for you that are unfamiliar, CAD is a computer-aided dispatch. That's what it stands for. It's basically a written record of telecommunications and dispatch information. basically who's dispatched to where and who responds. So we review that as well. We're also collecting historical reports on the involved parties, including previous reports that they may have been involved in at that address. Subpoenas on all medical records for everyone involved, including the officers. We've sent those out, have not received those back yet to date. An autopsy was obviously completed by the Winnebago County Coroner's Office, the pathologist that they use. Key evidence was submitted to the ISP crime lab, and that was done yesterday. Approximately 10 exhibits were taken up to the crime lab, the Illinois State Police crime lab, for analysis. We've also completed primary and secondary neighborhood canvasses, and those have been completed as well. And we've also completed interviews of Gutigo's girlfriend and his friend, and those have been completed as well. The officers are in the process of reviewing all this information, writing the reports, and completing the investigation. In regards to the second officer-involved shooting, the Rockford Police Department officer-involved shooting on Illinois Avenue, collection of approximately 20 squad car cams. Those are the squad cars that were arriving on scene. Obviously, there's no body cams for that, and there's no actual footage of the officer-involved shooting itself. Collection of all the evidence taken from CSI investigators, approximately 20 exhibits. And obviously, that doesn't include their photographs or reports as well. Same thing, a lot of redundancy here, but a collection of the 911 calls, radio traffic, officer reports, again, the CAD, computer-aided dispatch, while working on getting that collected. We also include the historical reports for the people involved in that shooting. Subpoenas for all medical records involved, for everyone involved, sent, not received yet. And the key evidence in that case was also submitted to the Illinois State Police Crime Lab yesterday. So they have all the key evidence in the case. A primary and secondary neighborhood canvass was done in that case as well, and that's been completed. And the interview of the suspect was attempted, and we've also taken his standards as far as DNA and fingerprints through a court order. I'd like to thank the public for their assistance in this case. Several witnesses were very cooperative in the case and in providing their statements, and some even provided some video via Ring doorbell and those type of media that's used nowadays to the investigating officers. We appreciate everyone's patience as we put this investigation together for the state's attorney's review. That's all I have.
So in terms of kind of places to go, I mentioned last time our website has our press releases on it. It has information about the Integrity Task Force. That's at WinnebagoCountyStatesAttorney.com, still the best place to go. Our office is working on a Facebook page. This has accelerated those efforts. We were kind of working towards a kind of social media strategy, and now with this happening, we want to do that with haste. So eventually, we'll have a social media page and specifically a Facebook page to release this information. Are there any questions?
About the video being released. In the past, video has not been released when it's still under investigation by the task force. And I believe it was the prosecution that had asked police departments not to release it. So I guess that's my question is that your new administration, you're doing something different?
I don't necessarily want to speak to the past administration, but I do think that your recitation is correct, that prior to me taking this position, the videos would be unlikely to be released. What really has happened is in this case, we have a sheriff and a police chief who want to be as transparent as possible. We've had lengthy discussions even before this happened about if it did, what we might do. I shared their desire for transparency. I did research, really deep research on my ethical obligations, and ultimately I was consulted on this and believe that basically the rights or the fair trial rights of someone who may be charged as a result of this investigation would not be affected by the release of the videos. That might not be in every case. In addition, one of the reasons I was consulted was because I had a few questions about the videos. Are there certain statements on the videos that may be problematic? Are there privacy concerns? But it really is important to note that ultimately it was the decision of the agencies, in this case RPD and the Sheriff's Office, to release those. And it is unlikely, very unlikely, for me as State's Attorney or the Integrity Task Force to release those. So as an example, let's say it was a different agency who took a different position. It's unlikely that I would tell that agency, you have to release the video, or that I, as the State's Attorney, would release the video. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does this affect your ability to use that as evidence in court?
I do not believe so, no. But I will say this, as you've noticed throughout the country, more video is being released, okay? And for a while, it was certain cities that were doing it and kind of setting the model, and there's been, I'm not talking about the last 10 years, I'm talking about probably the last 6 months to a year, where this has evolved really quickly. And I think there's a recognition that we have to just be more transparent and be more modern. That being said, some of the litigation that will follow, because there will be people who will, argue that they won't be able to have a fair trial, and those arguments have happened before. But I think some of those decisions are still yet to be determined. As I stand here right now, I don't believe anyone's constitutional rights have been violated by the release of those videos.
I guess going off on that, between the two, obviously, the sheriff's deputy case, we have, quite a lot of video with the body cameras, and obviously that's somewhat limited in Rockford's case, just with it just being dash cam. You mentioned the ring camera, so I guess for people to understand, do we feel like we'll have a footage or a picture of what happened in that case, or for people to understand, I guess, any concern if that leads us to, I guess, a gray area with, I guess, just not having the body cameras in that case?
So we don't know that yet. So not all the video's been reviewed, and so I can't answer whether we'll have video or picture evidence of what occurred in the city case.
I guess you mentioned around 20 dash cams or so in that case. Is there any indication that more footage from that would be, I guess, released in the future, or at this point does it seem like that one that has been released would be kind of the picture that, I guess, the public would get?
So it's an important distinction. I think what Chuck would say is, right now, he believes there's approximately 20 total dash cams from the city. This is where I want to be very careful not to assume or presume, but one of the presumption is Rockford put the video together, and they decided which videos to play and which not to. So I don't know if there was, other videos that showed something that they chose not to play, or, you see what I'm getting at? So we review it as kind of raw footage, and then we'll review all 20 of them in terms of how the city determined what to release and what not. I don't know.
So far, have you found a video that shows the shooting in the Rockford shooting?
So I have not reviewed any of the videos. With very few exceptions, all the evidence will kind of come to me at one time. And so I'm not reviewing it piecemeal. Again, there are some exceptions. But I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know, Chuck, if I'm guessing Chuck's going to say he hasn't reviewed them all, but you want to speak to that?
I have not reviewed them all, but I think it's safe to say that most of the camera footage that we're talking about is responding officers to the scene.
And they don't depict the actual shooting?
That'd be my understanding, yes. There's no body cam. Rockford obviously doesn't have body cams at this point. So
What do the reports say? Do they say that the suspect was holding a weapon when he was shot?
we're still digesting those and still reviewing those. So I'm not going to answer that until I get through all of the reports, until they all get in.
Why was that vehicle stopped?
A traffic violation.
A traffic violation?
That's how the stop initiated. I believe it said that in the video.
I thought the video said that there was suspected in recent incidents.
I'd have to go back and review it, but I believe it was a traffic stop. Initiated in the area of Central Michigan.
Yeah, it was a traffic stop. What I'm saying is, why were they stopping it?
As far as the original reason,
Yeah,
it had to do with a traffic violation, I believe.
traffic violation.
I believe so.
What about the specific guy? I mean, was he
Are you speaking of Gonzalez Jr.?
Yes.
Well, to my knowledge, there wasn't a warrant out for his arrest, if that's what you're,
So they were chasing him because he was running.
again, we can't speak to why they were chasing him.
So I was wondering, could you tell me who the deputy was who first took the report from Latigo's girlfriend?
I don't know that information. Do you know that information?
I don't, not off the top of my head. It'll be included in the reports that we're reviewing currently.
What about the deputy who tried to arrest Latigo in front of the residence? Who was that officer?
I think I know the information, but I'd rather verify it and make sure.
Okay.
But like I said, we're still reviewing all the reports. There's a lot of stuff to do on this investigation. We're still actively reviewing the reports, the cameras. There's a lot of work to be done. So I don't want to go off the cuff and say the wrong person's name. I just want to make sure I have it correct.
And it's different than the guy who took the report? Or you'd have to check?
That I don't know.
I guess now being, a few weeks into the investigation, is there any better idea, this might be a tough one to answer, as far as a timeline we're looking at in either of these cases, or again, is that kind of dependent on how long, I guess, the evidence takes to get through?
So I ask Chuck that about every day, and he tells me that he can't tell me an exact timeline. But, I mean, do you want to give an estimation of typically what an investigation like this, the time that it would take? And I think one of the things that, well, why don't you just
Sure.
give a
So
general.
it depends on what faction of the lab it's going to. Obviously, the most time-consuming part of that is the DNA analysis. That takes the most time, and that can be anywhere from typically, it depends on the case. I'm not going to set a specific time, but 4 to 6 months. And then stuff that goes to firearms, fingerprints is usually a lot quicker return. Typically anywhere from, I would say, 2 weeks to a month, typically in firearms and fingerprints. And that's the main areas of the lab that we're using in these cases. So,
Is there,
go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, is there DNA evidence in both these cases, or just one?
I think there's, well, I believe we collected DNA evidence in the county case. In the city case, I think it's undetermined. In other words, right, you submit evidence, you don't necessarily know whether the DNA was recovered. And why I mean that in the Winnebago County cases, just visually, there was blood on the scene that was collected. I do want to talk about one thing that Sergeant Davidson mentioned. So in almost every case, you wait for all of the forensic evidence to come back. But there are cases where you don't necessarily need all the forensic evidence. And so while I think it's safe to say that 4 to 6 months is probably an appropriate timeline, there could be a situation where it could be presented to me understanding that, the DNA isn't back, but DNA might not be particularly relevant to the decision. And I think you can understand the situations that might happen. And in terms of this courthouse and our office, there are lots of cases that we charge where we don't have all the forensic evidence back, or we believe the forensic evidence, wouldn't be determinant in whether someone should be charged or not.
I have one last question. You mentioned subpoenas for records of all involved. I was wondering if you could explain a little more. Is that the officers? Is that the
Both. So medical records are needed for a court case. Obviously, if the officer was injured, we want to have those for our court case to present, put in our case file, investigative file. Obviously, the other people involved as well. So we grand jury, we subpoena those records and submit them as part of our case file, part of our investigation. So we have all the content of all the medical issues of all involved.
All right, thank you. I don't know if we can go off camera for a second. I wanted to ask you about future press releases and press conferences. I was hoping to get your feedback on that. So I do intend on, having regular updates. But I can tell you in 2 weeks, we're not going to be saying that much different than what we talked about today. And, it takes effort for us to come up here, and I'm happy to do it. I think it's really important. But at the same time, I'm not promising anything, but I want I would like your input. It doesn't have to be right now, but is it worth it for you even to come here if not much is going to be said? I think that's something that I want to, work with everyone on. Because if it's just you guys getting footage of me standing here, not saying a whole lot